Good day, everyone! In this video, we are going to discuss the second part of the Grade 10 MAPEH lesson under Arts for the first quarter. This lesson will be focused on the different types of modern art, particularly the Expressionism and Abstractionism art movement. If you are ready to listen, let's start with our lesson. Let's first talk about Expressionism, a bold new movement. In the early 1900s, there arose in the Western art world a movement that came to be known as Expressionism. Expressionist artists created works with more emotional force rather than with realistic or natural images. To achieve this, they distorted outlines, applied strong colors, and exaggerated forms. They worked more with their imagination and feelings rather than with what their eyes saw in the physical world. Under the Expressionist art styles, we are going to learn about Neo-Primitivism, Fauvism, Dadaism, Surrealism, and lastly, Social Realism. Let's first talk about Neo-Primitivism. It was an art style that incorporated elements from the native arts of the South Sea Islanders and the wood carvings of African tribes, which suddenly became popular at that time. Among the Western artists who adapted these elements was Amadeo Modigliani, who used the oval faces and elongated shapes of African art in both his sculptures and paintings. Here are some of the artworks of Modigliani. The first one is called Head. He made it way back 1913 and it is made out of stone. Another artwork is called Yellow Sweater. He made it way back 1919 and it was an oil on canvas painting. One of the movements from this expressionist art style is called Fauvism. It was a style that used bold, vibrant colors and visual distortions. Its name was derived from the Les Fauves, wild beasts in English, referring to the group of French expressionist painters who painted in this style. Perhaps the most known among them was Henri Matisse. Here are some of the artworks of Matisse. The first one is an oil on canvas painting entitled Blue Window. He made it way back 1911. Another artwork of Matisse is called Woman with Hat. It is an oil on canvas painting made way back 1905. Another kind of artwork is called Dadaism. It was a style characterized by dream fantasies, memory images, and visual tricks and surprises, as in the paintings of Marc Chagall and Giorgio de Chirico below. Although the works appeared playful, the movements arose from the pain that a group of European artists felt after the suffering brought by World War I. Wishing to protest against the civilization that had brought on such horrors, these artists rebelled against established norms and authorities and against the traditional styles in art. They chose the child's term for hobby horse, Dada, to refer to their new non-style. Here are some of the artworks of Chirico. The first one is called Melancholy and Mastery of a Street, which is an oil on canvas painting he did way back 1914. One example of the artwork of Chagall is called I and the Village, which is an oil on canvas painting he did way back 1911. Another artwork is called Surrealism. It was a style that depicted an illogical, subconscious dream world beyond the logical, conscious physical one. Its name came from the term super-realism, with its artworks clearly expressing a departure from reality, as though the artists were dreaming, seeing illusions, or experiencing an altered mental state. Many surrealist works depicted morbid or gloomy subjects, as in those by Salvador Dali. Others were quite playful and even humorous, such as those by Paul Klee and Joan Miro. Here is some of an example of a surrealistic artworks from Salvador Dali. This is called Persistence of Memory. It is an oil on canvas which Dali made way back 1931. Another surrealistic artworks is from Paul Klee. This is an oil on wood entitled Diana, which he did way back 1932. Last example is called Personages with Star. This one is done by Joan Miro way back 1933. It is a painting of oil on canvas. Another art style is called social realism. The movement known as social realism expressed the artist's role in social reform. Here, artists use their works to protest against the injustices, inequalities, immorality, and ugliness of the human condition. In different periods of history, social realists have addressed different issues: war, poverty, corruption, industrial and environmental hazards, and more, in the hope of raising people's awareness and pushing society to seek reforms. Here are some examples of social realism artworks. Ben Shah's Miners' Wives, for example, spoke out against the hazardous conditions faced by coal miners after a tragic accident killed 111 workers in Illinois in 1947, leaving their wives and children in mourning. Another example is Pablo Picasso's Guernica has been recognized as the most monumental and comprehensive statement of social realism against the brutality of war. Filling one wall of the Spanish pavilion at the 1937 World's Fair in Paris, it was Picasso's outcry against the German air raid of the town of Guernica in his native Spain. It is an oil on canvas painting which Picasso did way back 1937. Created in the mid-1900s, Guernica combined artistic elements developed in the earlier decades with those still to come. It made use of the exaggeration, distortion, and shock technique of Expressionism. At the same time, it had elements of the emerging style that would later be known as Cubism. Now let's talk about another modern art style called Abstractionism. Another group of artistic styles emerged at the same time as the Expressionist movement. It had the same spirit of freedom of expression and openness that characterized life in the 20th century, but it differed from Expressionism in certain ways. This group of styles was known as Abstractionism. The Abstractionist movement arose from the intellectual points of view in the 20th century. In the world of science, physicists were formulating a new view of the universe, which resulted in the concepts of space-time and relativity. This intellectualism was reflected even in art. While Expressionism was emotional, Abstractionism was logical and rational. It involved analyzing, detaching, selecting, and simplifying. In previous centuries, works of art were a reflection, in one way or another, of the outside world. In 20th century Abstractionism, natural appearances became unimportant. Artists reduced a scene into geometrical shapes, patterns, lines, angles, textures, and swirls of color. The resulting artworks ranged from representational abstractionism, depicting still recognizable subjects, as in the artwork on the right, to pure abstractionism where no recognizable subject could be discerned. Here are some of the Abstractionism art styles. The first one is Cubism, then we have Futurism, Mechanical style, and lastly, Non-Objectivism. Let's first discuss what Cubism is. The Cubist style derived its name from the cube, a three-dimensional geometric figure composed of strictly measured lines, planes, and angles. Cubist artworks were therefore a play of planes and angles on a flat surface. Foremost among the Cubists was a Spanish painter-sculptor named Pablo Picasso. In earlier styles, Subjects were depicted in a three-dimensional manner, formed by light and shadow. In contrast, the Cubists analyzed their subjects' basic geometrical forms and broke them up into a series of planes. Then, they reassembled these planes, tilting and interlocking them in different ways. In addition, the art of the past centuries had depicted a scene from a single stationary point of view, and in contrast, Cubism took the contemporary view that things are actually seen hastily in fragments and from different points of view at the same time. This was reflected in the depiction of objects from more than one visual angle in the same painting. Example is the bull's head in Picasso's Guernica. Human figures as well were often represented with facial features and body parts shown both frontally and from a side angle at once. This gave a sense of imbalance and misplacement that created immediate visual impact. It also gave Cubism its characteristic feeling of dynamism and energy. To this day, variations of Cubism continue to appear in many contemporary artworks. Here are some artworks by Picasso. This first one is entitled Three Musicians, which he did way back 1921. It is an oil on canvas painting. Another Picasso's artwork is called Girl Before a Mirror. He did it way back 1932. It is also an oil on canvas painting. Another art style is called Futurism. The movement known as Futurism began in Italy in the early 1900s. As the name implies, the Futurists created art for a fast-paced machine-propelled age. They admired the motion, force, speed, and strength of mechanical forms. Thus, their works depicted the dynamic sensation of all these, as can be seen in the works of Italian painter Gino Severini. Here is an example of Severini's artworks, entitled Armored Train, which is an oil on canvas painting he did way back 1915. Another art style is called mechanical style. As a result of the Futurist movement, what became known as the mechanical style emerged. In this style, basic forms such as planes, cones, spheres, and cylinders all fit together precisely and neatly in their appointed places. This can be seen in the works of Fernand Léger. Mechanical parts such as crankshafts, cylinder blocks, and pistons are brightened only by the use of primary colors. Otherwise, they are lifeless. Even human figures are mere outlines rendered purposely without expression. Here are some examples of Léger's artwork. This is called The City. It is an oil on canvas painting he did way back 1919. The last art style is called non-objectivism. The logical geometrical conclusion of Abstractionism came in the style known as non-objectivism. From the very term non-object, works in this style did not make use of figures or even representations of figures. They did not refer to recognizable objects or forms in the outside world. Lines, shapes, and colors were used in a cool, impersonal approach that aimed for balance, unity, and stability. Colors were mainly black, white, and the primaries red, yellow, and blue. Foremost among the non-objectivists was Dutch painter Piet Mondrian. Here is an example of Mondrian's artwork, an oil on canvas painting entitled New York City, which he did way back 1942. And that's the end of the second part of our topic under first quarter lesson in arts. I hope you learned a lot about the Expressionist and Abstractionist art movement under modern art. For the third and last part of this lesson, please watch the other videos I uploaded in my channel. Thank you for watching and see you in our next lesson. Bye!